President Joe Biden has declared a state of emergency in the state of Texas after Senator Ted Cruz and Governor Greg Abbott requested a federal disaster declaration. Biden was actually immediately responsive to their request here, and it was for good reason. Texas has been dealing with severe temperatures that have been, of course, contributed to by climate change. And what people are experiencing, millions of people are experiencing in Texas right now, are rolling blackouts as the freezing temperatures literally lead to people losing their lives. That's how cold it's been, and people can't even rely on power to keep themselves warm with heat. So the White House went on to say that funding measures will include mass care and sheltering, and FEMA is authorized to use necessary equipment and resources to help ease the impacts of the winter weather emergency. More than 4 million Texans have been left without power as a result of these rolling blackouts that are taking place. And the rolling blackouts, by the way, are referred to as controlled blackouts, meaning that the companies that run the power are intentionally doing these rolling blackouts as a result of an increased usage of power. Now, you're gonna hear all sorts of nonsense from right-wing media, including places like Fox News. There are endless clips, including a clip featuring Tucker Carlson, Harris Faulkner, all of them arguing that what Texans are experiencing is really the byproduct of renewable energy. That is not the case. I'm gonna give you a quick example of what they're saying, and then we're gonna debunk it. Let's take a quick look.
Winter storms in Texas have left over 2 million people without power as their wind turbines are frozen solid. Former Texas Governor and Energy Secretary Rick Perry said this is the risk of green energy.
You need to have a diversity of energy sources no matter where you are. And it couldn't be a greater example of that in the state of Texas right now. We got massive amount of wind farms out in West Texas that are frozen up. All of that wind energy was lost.
Is this what America would look like under the Green New Deal?
No, this isn't what America would look like under the Green New Deal. This is what America looks like when it's heavily reliant on the fossil fuel industry and essentially allows for overwhelming deregulation of the fossil fuel industry. So back in 2002, by the way, Texas deregulated its utility companies, specifically energy companies. And that has led to quite a bit of issues today, including the fact that since these private utilities don't have to basically through regulation reserve power for emergency events like this, they don't have a legal incentive to do it because of regulations. They certainly don't have a financial incentive to do it. And so there are no reserves. There's an increased demand for power as people are trying to warm themselves up using, their heaters. And when you have this situation tied so closely to the market and this whole notion of supply and demand, people are gonna get screwed. And that's what you're gonna experience in Texas. Let me give you the evidence for the case that I'm trying to make here. As the Financial Times reports, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas had announced rotating outages at 1:25 a.m. local time on Monday after the cold weather froze wellheads and interrupted supply to natural gas-fired power plants, and some wind turbines became encased in ice, curtailing electricity output. So it is true that wind turbines froze, but this goes back to the issue of deregulation and also climate change. Since the cold temperatures that Texas is experiencing right now is rare, almost unprecedented, the state does not implement regulations ensuring that wind turbines have something known as like de-icing gear, right? So the wind turbines don't have the de-icing gear. They could have had the de-icing gear, but that regulation doesn't exist in the state of Texas, so that's a problem. Now, what portion of the power outages are caused by wind turbines in the state freezing? Less than 13%. As you guys know, Texas is all about the fossil fuels. And so there are issues with the fossil fuel industry not reserving energy for these emergency events, but more importantly, just not having the equipment necessary to respond to insanely cold temperatures that the state is experiencing right now. Generators are paid only for the energy that they sell, not for keeping capacity in reserve for times of stress. Electricity retailers compete fiercely for customer business, unlike utility monopolies that operate in some other states, and can adjust prices according to market conditions. So they adjust. These companies in Texas can adjust the prices based on market conditions. And when there's less supply and more demand, what does that mean? It means that providing electricity is going to be far more expensive to the consumer. So wholesale electricity prices for delivery surpassed the grid's price cap of $9,000 per megawatt hour in the early hours of Monday this week. Multiples above averages or average prices of $25 per megawatt hour. Okay, so obviously the price increased significantly, and what they're doing is implementing these rolling blackouts because of a lack of supply, but more importantly, because if they don't do this, what's likely to happen is that the consumers in the state of Texas will be slapped with these massive electricity bills that they were not expecting. And so to blame this on the Green New Deal or to blame this on renewable energy is absolutely ridiculous. And what you guys are experiencing right now in this propaganda campaign is the fossil fuel industry attempting to get ahead of accurate news reports about what's really going on and how this privatized system that favors fossil fuels in the state of Texas is really to blame for what Texans are experiencing. It's just so frustrating.
It is. You know what? I started taking notes because I was like, I didn't want to forget some of the things that I wanted to say. The first thing that I wanted to point out was, despite of the issues that we may have with Joe Biden and his history and some of the things that he participates in, I have to commend him in his response to all of Texans, in spite of his differences in ideology with the actual governor, whereas the former president of this country had an issue with the governor of New York and responded to the whole state of New York with animus towards all of the people. And I just think that we should be able to say, this is how a president is supposed to behave, because they're supposed to be the president of all people, regardless of what their political affiliation is. So I wanted to point that out because I think that is not lost on me. You know, one thing we need to do is, there are a lot of people who will do research and they research what celebrities said in an old tweet. We need to find out, follow the money and find out who is paying Tucker Carlson and all of these people who continue to push these talking points. We need to expose these people, and we really, all of those internet research gurus that are out there, and they can find when you said that you didn't like cows 10 years ago. Y'all need to follow the money and find out who's paying these people to continuously push out all of this misinformation that's not only wrong, but it's also harmful to the American people, because there are a lot of people who believe this stuff, and a lot of people have lost their lives in the last couple of years because of all of the misinformation that is being peddled by Fox News and people like them. And we have to call it out if we really are about the people. The other thing is that the people in this country are feeling and have been feeling for a long time the consequences of the imbalance in our government, because they are clenching the bag. And these people who are getting paid by these corporations and are benefiting from all of this horrible stuff that is being, rained down on the environment and the people, they don't want to let go of the bag. And we are the great casualty of this war, and we always have been. And the pandemic has been a great, great evidence of that, as we are, walking into 500,000 people dead. And they've normalized it. We've become desensitized to loss and struggle and strife. It's become an American thing for people who are below the line to suffer and struggle, and it just be Tuesday. And at some point, we're gonna have to recollect our humanity and restore dignity to all people in America, or the poor are going to eat the rich, because people are only gonna be able to take this but for so long. All of this all of these things are connected, and it is all part of the oppressive system and the toxic capitalism in this country that is now it's wreaking havoc on all corners of America, from Flint to Texas, from New Orleans to California. Everywhere we look, we are seeing the consequences of this greed, and at some point, people are going to have to take heed, because people can only struggle and starve for so long.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, just this one story involving frigid temperatures, not just in Texas, by the way. This is impacting the Southern Plains, Arkansas, North Dakota. They're experiencing frigid temperatures as well. It's just that Texas and the way that they run their power grid and the deregulation tied to it has put the state in a uniquely awful position to respond to a climate-fueled weather event that they're experiencing. And so what really stood out to me, Aida, with this story was just how well organized and prepared these fossil fuel companies are to respond in a way that tries to protect themselves before anyone even thinks about doing a deep dive in the story, understanding what's going on. I mean, Fox News was already on it with the propaganda about how no, it's not the fossil fuel industry, it's the wind turbines. And so they will do anything to maintain the system that we already have in place right now, regardless of what it does to the future of this planet, regardless of what it does to this planet right now as we speak. I mean, we're experiencing extreme weather events as a result of climate change. And they don't care. I mean, it's all about profits. It's all about ensuring they maintain the system that we currently have. And it's just absolutely disgraceful. Just last weekend, last Friday, there was a big story about more than 100 cars in a pileup in a highway that had basically frozen over. So I don't know if you guys had seen those videos. I do not recommend watching them because they're absolutely devastating. But people are dying, and at the end of the day, these private companies, fossil fuel companies, are only thinking about what they can do to protect their own profits.
Yeah, it's the American way. And you think about these people who are now dealing with COVID and these freezing temperatures and dealing with economic strife and dealing with not having adequate healthcare, like all of it compounded. It is so much on the psyche. And just to think about, when you trickle down to the Black and brown people, people who are not able-bodied, like that are dealing with this, because we forget that there are other people on this planet who can't even stand up right now. And in addition to this, have to deal with all of this. My heart just goes out to the people in Texas, but it goes out to all of the people in America, because this is the beginning of not the beginning, it's just these things have been happening for a long time and they continue to happen. And the water in Flint.
Yeah, no, I know what we're seeing is an acceleration of the despair. It's just one after the next, after the next, after the next, and nothing gets addressed appropriately by certainly not our congressional lawmakers. And we see failure on a local level as well.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.